invite everyone to listen to Crann stories and poetry every Monday night at 11 p.m. Eastern Time on Reese Across America Radio. Search out www.reeseacrossamerica.org/radio by typing in the word Reese in these mobile apps, iHeartRadio, Odyssey, or TuneIn. Or find them on a web browser to listen to the show and support WAA Radio. That's Whiskey Alpha Alpha Radio. Reese Across America is a nonprofit radio station in Portland, Maine, USA that supports veterans programs and organizations. By tuning in, you are helping support veterans across the U.S., so search them out, enjoy the shows they have to offer, and thank a veteran while you're at it, no matter where you are in the world. Cead Fáilte, 1,000 welcomes to Crann short stories and poetry for June 28th. I'm Terrance Ó Domhnaill, your village scéalaí, back again this week with more stories and poems from online authors. I have 2 short stories and 2 poems this week. We have Chapter 22 of the ongoing story from Beyond the Waterwall, and Part 3 of the young adult story about Renae and the pixie. Then I have 2 wonderful poems that might make you think a little bit about life. So gather around once more and let me read them to you under the shade of the Crann beatha, the Tree of Life. So, the ongoing saga from Beyond the Waterwall, this is Chapter 22 of 25, entitled Through the Cave, by Don Woodby, published in the Fiction Writer's Den. Previously, a look at Aegon's life as the new leader. He tells his wife about the operations inside the cave. "Are you sure you're fit to go?" Abby asked Spike as they all gathered around the yard. He touched his belly, looked at his arms over his shoulders, and inflated his chest. "Yeah, I gave my word." "When inside the cave, walk close to me at all times," Mars whispered to Wren. She nodded slightly and touched his shoulder. Ares, who hadn't shown up all day, suddenly emerged from the woods. Wren approached the wolf and placed her hand over his head. "You want to come with us?" Ares sniffed her, wagging his tail. "I guess that is a yes," Mars said. "He's silent, so I don't think he's going to blow our cover anyway. It's going to be an extra help." "How is Hades?" Mars asked, looking at Wren. "I put him here." Wren pointed to a small bag she carried. "I'm going to keep him with me." Slowly they drove. The vehicle was still shattered, and they didn't want to get any attention. All the lights were out. Harry sat quietly on the trunk of the pickup, surrounded by weapons. Soon before reaching the turn to the main street on the beach, they noticed some blue and red lights flashing around. "Slow down," Mars said. 2 police cars there." Trench hit the brakes and turned the engine off. The military vehicles drove around, 1 block away from where they needed to stop. "What do we do now?" Abby asked. "We'll wait for them to leave," the fisherman said. "Doesn't look like they are actively searching for something," Abby said. "Seems like a normal round to me." "Still," Wren said, "if they see us, they will come." "Let's wait and relax," Spike said, leaning on the window. "If they come, we'll kill them." So it went for almost an hour. The police vehicles circled the block again and again. Every time they got closer to their car, everyone inside held their breath instinctively. After a long and harrowing time, they went away. "They will probably patrol somewhere else," Abby said. "That's how they do normally," the fisherman said. "They don't come around this area often. Border Patrol is not that far away, after all." "Won't they see us?" Abby said. "Border Patrol, I mean." "Most likely, yes," Trent shrugged. "They will just assume we're fishing. We'll keep the weapons under the tarp." "And if they see the wolf," Wren said, "hopefully they will just think it's a big dog." Trent turned the car back on, still keeping the lights off. They drove to the beach and parked near the sand. "The boat is still there," Trent exhaled heavily, as if relieved to see it. Each one grabbed their own weapon and carried them to the boat. The wolf followed, like a dog going for a walk. The boat sailed smoothly for most of their short trip. About 15 minutes had passed when they saw the 2 big ships stationed there. "I wonder if they are permanently here," Mars thought to himself. The sea suddenly became agitated as they approached the cave. Harry stood up and walked around unquietly. "Sea level is not that high," the fisherman said. "We can anchor by the rocks." "Are you ready?" Mars whispered to Wren. She nodded timidly and crouched to pick up her flamethrower. When the ship was close enough to the rocks, Trent dropped the anchor. They carefully went down one by one and slithered through the rock path to arrive at the sand. The 2 battleships stood tall before them. There was no movement on the deck. "Do you guys see someone?" Wren whispered. "They're probably inside," Mars said. "I'm going to spread some bombs near the entrance as Plan B. If they come, be prepared to detonate. Spike shrugged. If they see us, we're dead anyway. He had barely finished speaking, and Abby slapped him on the back of the head. The cave entrance stood around 100 paces from them. I'm going to peek inside, Mars said. Stay there, you all. He climbed the reddish-brown rocks that were spread around the entrance. Beside him, a narrow, but still wide enough to fit a human, stream of water flowed. I was probably dragged from here until the rocks, he thought to himself. Inside, it was all bright. Many poles of light with wide bases were set around the cave. The blue and red beams were similar to the ones that emanated from the soldiers' armor. Mars spread the explosives by the entrance, as signal to the others to follow him. Come, come, Renae whispered to Ares. The wolf followed calmly, wagging his tail. She glanced back over her shoulders and caught a glimpse of a weak light inside the ship. She froze for a second, then pointed at it to show the others. Let's move fast, the fisherman whispered. Wren pointed again as soon as she was near Mars, to which he answered with a nod, indicating that he had already seen it. If they come, he said to her, blow them out. I hope no one is inside, she said, or we're going to be surrounded. They finished climbing the rocks and entered the cave, losing sight of the ships outside. Stay near me, Mars told Wren, but pay attention to the rear. I know, she said, rolling her eyes. The river flowed on their left. To the right, there was a line of light poles that supposedly had been set by the soldiers. The noise from the water compromised their hearing, brought some uncertainty. Wren pointed ahead. Look! Around 50 steps away from them, slightly to the left, after a turn, there was a small waterfall flowing inside the soil and going to the river. They kept walking in its direction, and upon arriving, Mars looked down. It's too narrow to fit a person under it, he thought. The water flowed through a kind of natural pipe. Many other waterfalls could also be seen, mostly to the right, flowing straight to the sea. Which one could it be, Wren asked, puzzled. Mars silenced for a moment and looked around. After some time, he said, We will have to look. The right one will probably flow straight to the rocks outside. The cave seemed extraordinarily larger from the inside. Their breathing became increasingly heavier until they reached an intersection. The river flowed on the side, cutting the way to the left. Wren walked in front. As soon as she reached the crossing point, she peeked to the left and halted. Stop, she shouted a whisper. Look there. To their front, the path continued, similar to what had been before. Several small waterfalls, all apparently on the right side and not connected to the main river that led to the rocks. To the left, there was one single waterfall that flowed directly to the river. Mars' heart raced as he looked at it. It must be this one. On the foot of the waterfall and ahead, though there was a fireplace, between 15 and 20 as far as he could see, black tents. Shh, Wren whispered firmly to the wolf who had just begun to growl. Ares hushed, still showing his teeth. We need to cross, Mars said calmly. If they see us, they will call for reinforcements, Spike said. If you guys want to go, you can go. You already fulfilled your part. Not yet, Trent said. They walked into the river. The water went up to their waist. The weak stream didn't cause any struggle, except for Ares, who had to swim across it. Wren was the first to jump out of the river. In front of the fire, coming from inside one of the tents, a soldier crawled. She halted, paralyzed, pointing at them. The trooper shouted something, grabbed a radio on his shoulder, and put it close to his mouth. Before she could turn around to alert the others, a warm wind passed by her face, as Mars' loud voice resounded, Get down! The explosive hit the middle of the camping place. A deafening blast cut through the silence as the tents flew around a massive globe of fire. He stood with his weapon still aimed as Wren threw herself to the ground. Trench, Spike, and Abby sought shelter behind the large rocks that lay around the cave. Mars grabbed Wren and pulled her behind another collection of rocks. She could hear him whispering, 1, 2, 3. Mars and Wren, and also the wolf, were on the left side of the river. The other 3 hid on the right flank. This is not going to kill them all, Mars said, and immediately after, a group of 5 soldiers crawled under the smoke, getting away from the detonation area, seeking refuge. 20, 21, 22, he kept whispering to himself. What are you doing, Wren hissed. He set his weapon to 1, stood up, and fired against the enemies again. Trench and Spike also shot with their rifles. Abby carried the shotgun and sat on the ground with her back facing the rock. Prepare to detonate, Mars said to Wren. 32, 33. Wren nodded and grabbed her phone. 3 other soldiers fell, victim to their bullets. The last two were able to hide behind a pile of wreckage that appeared from the explosion and began to shoot back. Dust hovered around and covered their targets. 81, 82, 83, 84, Mars continued. Wren held Ares by his fur, preventing him from running to the action. Bullets kept flying around until Trench stood up and moved slightly away from his shelter, looking for a better angle. Blood spattered from the fisherman's shoulder as he fell to the ground. Spike kneeled up, closed his right eye, aimed his rifle, and shot twice, dropping the two soldiers left. 98, 99, 100. Blow it up! Well, this story is getting better. So my next story is part 3 of The Blooming of the Violet Dusk Oak. And Will Renae's and Vidi's Words Reach Bobby by Sarah Fellers, published in Thought Thinkers. The day of the raising competition promised to be bright and sunny that morning. Even so, Renae felt knots of dread tying themselves tight in her stomach. Vidi perched on her shoulder as she stared ahead at the campus greenhouse. Once a refuge, it was now a place of judgment. Though the competition promised to be a small, quick event, Professor Musgrove had reserved the whole greenhouse for it. Renae and Bobby were only competing against 3 others, and a few friends and family were invited to watch. Renae eyed Vidi. Do you think we're ready to do this? Do you really think talking to her will change your mind? Vidi asked. Renae swallowed her dashed hope and sighed. I know my saying anything won't get us anywhere, but very few people have encountered pixies in this country, and given vampires' reputation... Vidi's purple eyes bulged. Her wings turned a pale yellow. She bounced up off Renae's shoulder and flung herself into Renae's many braids. After a couple of seconds, her tiny face poked out between them. They sucked all kinds of creatures dry. How are we not getting hazard insurance even being around them? They were so calm about it, and I have to wonder if they weren't ostracized for being murderers if they... Calm down, Vidi. Bobby isn't a killer. And anyway, there will be people watching. She's all about image. There's no way she could come after us in public. Renae reassured as best she could, but her hand shook as it reached for the greenhouse door handle. Vidi pulled herself back behind a blanket of hair. Now who's interrupting? And only in public. That's not reassuring. And this might require more than just talk. We might have to show Bobby the damage being done. How it's not unlike the horrible things vampires have been through because of their past. Renae had known this already, but Vidi had been part of a people who had been very isolated from the advances of modern times. She wasn't about to spook Vidi anymore. She turned the door handle and pushed. As they entered and beelined for a potting table, Bobby's familiar low tone sounded through the air like an alarm. Mother, please, this is really important to me, and it won't take long. He can't spare just a few minutes? It's a simple spell, and I'm really good. Honestly, Barbara, your father has other things to worry about. I have other matters to attend to. Your brother's last experiment has caused quite the scandal, and when he inherits the business, this kind of situation will look very bad for us. Your father is reassuring his clients. Now, let's get this over with. Hurry up and win this so I can give back to your brother. At least when you win, you'll be good for something, even if it's something this useless. Bobby's mother's voice had no feeling in it. It wasn't even coldly serious, angrily tight, or anxious. It was rushed, distant. This wasn't a mother talking with her daughter, but an ice cube talking to a turnip. He fanged out at the bar last year. That is the only situation you are talking about. It only happened once. Once is enough, young lady. Now, Bobby, I'm very tired. You should be grateful I came at all. Bobby's mother gave a long sigh and strode off. Renae could hear the clinking of heels on the greenhouse tile floor. Vidi came out of hiding and settled once more on Renae's shoulder. Wow, okay. Maybe Bobby isn't the vampire we need to worry about. Not even my queen acts as entitled as her mother, Vidi chirped. Bobby stepped out of the shadows, her head low, her shoulders shaking. She approached the potting table and collapsed under the bench without even looking at it. Renae bit her bottom lip. The knots in her stomach were loosening. How could a parent tell their child that? Bobby's mother had basically said she was worthless. Although Renae's parents were out of town, they had called to wish her luck, tell her how proud they were of her for taking this chance. Renae was about to tell Vidi to give Bobby a little room before approaching her, but she suddenly realized her shoulder was slightly lighter than before. She reached a hand to that shoulder and then around her hair. Then she looked towards Bobby and saw the pixie already on her table. Bobby didn't seem to notice at first, but then she jumped back and stood as though she had just seen a bug. What in hysteria are you?" she asked. "You're really pale," Viddy explained. Renae palmed her forehead. "Way to answer, Viddy." "Who? What?" Then her blonde hair bobbed up in time to see Renae watching, right before Renae quickly turned away and pretended to be raiding her supplies. "Renae, are you trying to throw me off my game or something?" "Nah, Renae is too nice to do something like that, unlike your mother. I guess I can understand why you wouldn't like her. But why are you crying? Not that it's really a bad thing for you. You need some color on your face," Viddy explained. That was the last thing Renae had expected from Viddy. That poor little pixie was going to be in for it. The knots in her stomach were released. Something else, a warmth, boiled in her chest. She turned and opened her mouth to say something herself. But Bobby didn't even look angry. She just stared at Viddy, completely perplexed. Then she burst out laughing. "Yeah, I always thought I was too pale, too. Sunburn is terrible for vampires. We're more prone to it than most. So, really, what are you? Clearly you know how to talk." "I'm a pixie. You can call me Viddy. Don't ask me what it's a nickname for. You'll never be able to pronounce it. You have a nickname too, right? Bobby. It's a nickname for Barbara. I never would have guessed that." "Oh, what did you guess?" "That your parents wanted a boy." The smile on her face suddenly became cracked and strained, like an old rubber band that was ready to break. She muttered that they did. Any good vampire nocturne has to have a strong leader, and strength means winning. My mother's probably right. Viddy flew closer to Bobby and used her tiny purplish hand to wipe the new tears on her cheek. "No, she's not. When you cultivate plants, you cultivate life. Strong leaders take care of life and are kind. I think it's wonderful that you are a vampire who wants to take care of these plants. Seeing others fail? That's not strength. In the same way you wouldn't want any of your plants to fail. No one wins then." Bobby's eyes glowed a pale red and teared up again. "You don't think this is just a waste?" she asked quietly. Viddy giggled. "Of course not. I'm a pixie. My home is in the flowers and the trees." Suddenly her wings turned blue and her face dropped. "That was my home," she said quietly. Bobby's eyebrows narrowed in confusion. "What do you mean?" "My home was Dusk Oak Park, but we've been forced to move," Viddy explained. "I just want to go home." Renae walked over the table and set a mirror in front of Bobby. The night before, she had snuck into the park and placed its corresponding mirror in the violet dusk oak. Renae then tapped twice on the glass, and it rippled like a watery surface. Suddenly, it depicted a part of the park that was reflected in the magical mirror in the tree. Only it didn't reflect a lush forest. It showed a land of tree stumps, dead branches, and bare soil. The paler red glow in Bobby's black eyes became sharper and bled outside of the iris as she looked away from the mirror and at Renae. "What are you trying to do?" Bobby demanded. "Show you the truth," Renae asked her gently. "Do any of the vampires remember when they were run out of their homes by angry mobs, and then had to watch as their lives, everything they ever knew, were burned to the ground out of fear? That's completely different. No one fears pixies or nymphs for that matter. They just need to catch up to the rest of the world." "It's not different," Viddy's voice caught both girls' attention. "Fear is fear, no matter the reason. Your parents are scared that if they aren't seen as winners, then they will have to face the same thing their grandparents did. So, your father bought the park, is building on it to impress people. That's why they care about looking like winners. Why you care? You're afraid of what will happen if you don't. Vampires still have to prove themselves, prove that we help society and not hurt it. Do you have any idea what it's like to be looked at as a monster?" Bobby shot at both of them. Her fangs were beginning to show. "Do you really think kicking people from their homes will change the depiction of vampires as monsters?" Renae asked. Bobby didn't have an answer for that. She looked back at the mirror. She saw a wasteland. That forest had once been so beautiful and lush. Now it was the embodiment of devastation. Then she looked at Viddy, who stared at her with pure anticipation. "Renae, will you, Viddy, and Professor Musgrove all come with me to talk with my father? And bring the mirror, too. This destruction, this isn't a win for anyone." The girl's attention quickly turned to one of the pots as a long green stem suddenly burst from the soil, a bud at the end reaching toward the glass ceiling. "Caring for life, that is the reputation we need to build. And for once, my father is going to listen to me." Renae and Bobby stood on the edge of the clearing. A week later, the violet dusk oak had just bloomed. Purple petals covered its curling branches and blanketed the new grass below. But the blooming was not the only reason they were there. Viddy waved to them from one of the tree branches. They had just said goodbye to each other, because Viddy, the other pixies, and the nymphs were returning home. Bobby had crashed her father's secondary board meeting, bringing Viddy, Renae, Professor Musgrove, and the queen of the Dusk Oak Park pixies. Vampire and the pixie kind were different in almost every way except one. They all knew what it was like to be different and to be judged for that. Now the pixies had come home just in time to celebrate the end of spring and for the beginning of a wonderful new friendship with witches and vampires. So I believe that's going to be the last one, but you never know. She might come up with something else, so I'll keep an eye out for more of these stories. Now I'm going to take a little break right now, and I'll let you listen to my little commercial here about everything, and I'll be back in a couple of minutes. During this break, I wish to ask for a donation of any amount to help me keep this podcast going. I'm fine with whatever you can afford, using whatever currency you want. I've set up a donation tab on the Crann Stories and Poetry webpage at rss.com and a donation page on my website at www.crannbeatha.com using PayPal for your security. Don't worry about the exchange rates, as PayPal takes care of that for us. If you like this podcast, please like, subscribe, and share it with everyone you know in your social circles, as the writers I showcase in this podcast deserve all the exposure they can get. I created this podcast for them because I love to read their work, and I believe it should be shared with the whole world. Now I want to explain how to find my website. Since this show is audio only, just write down the website name from the podcast image showing here and search for it. Visitors finding the website for the first time will reach the welcome page to learn a little bit about what's inside. You'll see the homepage link at the bottom of the page. Click on it if you wish to enter my world. Once on the homepage, you'll see the menu bar at the top where there are links to the pages in the website. Feel free to look around all you want. If you should happen to buy one of my books, all the better. Thank you for your support. Welcome back, everyone. So now in the second half, I've got a couple of short poems for you. My first one is called A Prophecy Foretold, a poem by Jojo Tekena, published in Imogene's Notebook. In days of future passed by, I wonder, where did I go wrong? What were the signs I could have seen? The spirals I should have followed? I look in that window from the dew-chilled dusk and shiver. Where were you when I needed the sun, the golden light I craved? My body rebelled, decaying again. No matter how I've crumbled, even in the flush of my youth, my shell, compartmented by pain, worry, deceit. I see you working in your kitchen. Warmth, contentment, cats around your ankles. I'm just outside that circle of light, staring in envy, a prophecy meant for some, not me. My path is made on a different spiral, a road not assigned to many. Has my life been written? Do the stars tell of my end on a clock with numbers I can feel? I wish I could afford to buy the drama others frolic in. Lovers, friends, enemies, misfit artists firing their hearts into the sea. No, my prophecy has been foretold. Life is a gift, and I yearn to wake up, and know my future has enduring truth. Another year hoped for, yet never guaranteed. In time, perhaps, you'll invite me in for tea, and the cat will purr in my lap. Perhaps then I'll see the world through eyes without a prophecy, the clock silent. Lastly, I have a tranquility poem here. It's a new artist that I found, and it's entitled In Watery Depths, A Descent into Tranquility by Waqas Ahmad. In the watery embrace, I find a solace beyond the world's clamor. I quest for the embrace of depths untold, where liquid silence claims my soul. Beneath the surface, where secrets unfold, I seek a refuge, a silent dole. Like Icarus drawn by the lure of waves that beckon and serene, I dive into the unknown, secure in the watery solace, a tranquil scene. No need for breath, no worries to tend, just the gentle ebb and flow of the tide. I surrender to the depths' sweet blend, where sorrow and pain can no longer abide. The world above fades into a haze as water envelops me warm and kind. I'm weightless, suspended in a timeless maze where dreams and reality intertwine. I'm content in this watery embrace where time stands still and burdens cease. In the silent depths, I find my sacred space, a sanctuary where peace finds release. Let the currents claim me, forever lost, in the depths of slumber, eternal and deep. For in watery oblivion, my soul is tossed, where I find solace and eternal sleep. And he writes an afterthought here. It says, this poem explores the allure of escape and the yearning for complete peace. I draw a parallel between Icarus's flight and their descent into the depths, suggesting a deliberate choice to abandon the burdens of the surface world. The water becomes a symbol of both refuge and oblivion. So that's all I have for everyone this week. I hope you enjoyed everything that I brought you, and I look forward to bringing you some more next week. Sláinte. Guru Mahagat. Thank you for listening to the show today. I hope you enjoyed the variety of stories and poems again this week. If you like the show, please like, subscribe, and reply, as this goes a long way towards reaching more listeners around the world. As a Shanké, I hope you will allow me to continue delighting you with a story or poem here under the crown of beatha. Maybe they will bring you a smile, take you away from your troubles for a time. As I say goodbye this week, I wish to leave you with this Irish blessing as you go about your day. May your path rise up to meet you, and the sun warm your bonnet as you walk down the lane to the pub. May your friends and relations bring you a pint after you retell these stories and poems I give you here. Slán go fóill. Goodbye for now.